Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the crystal corridors of the consortium's Capitol building. Her footsteps echoed in the vast hallways that were built for beings much taller than humans. The walls sparkled with strange lights that hurt her eyes if she looked directly at them. Everything about this place was designed to make visitors feel small and unimportant. 50 years had passed since the Zeltharian Consortium first contacted Earth. They had arrived with massive ships that blocked out the sun over major cities. Their message was simple: join their galactic trade network or be destroyed. Earth's leaders had no choice but to agree. The trade deal was terrible for humanity. Earth became nothing more than a mining colony. The consortium took whatever they wanted from the planet. They forced humans to work in dangerous conditions on the moon, pulling precious metals from the rocks. Thousands of people had died in those mines. The aliens didn't care. Chen reached the council chamber. The doors were 30 feet tall and made of some kind of metal that seemed to shift colors. They opened silently as she approached. Inside, the High Council waited for her. The Zeltharians were strange to look at. They stood 12 feet tall and looked like living crystals. Their bodies caught the light and threw it around the room in rainbow patterns. They had no faces, as humans understood them. Instead, they spoke through musical sounds that came from somewhere inside their crystal forms. 5 council members sat on raised platforms that looked like grown coral. The center platform held Nexus Prime, their leader. His crystal body was darker than the others, and covered in patterns that moved like slow lightning. "The human speaks again," Nexus Prime said. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "We thought your kind had learned its place in our empire." Chen stood straight and looked up at them. She had practiced this moment for months. Her words had to be perfect. This was humanity's last chance for a peaceful solution. "I come with a final message from Earth," she said. Her voice was steady and clear. "The people of Earth demand that you stop all mining operations on our moon. We demand that you release all human workers from forced labor. We demand that you treat Earth as an equal partner, not a slave world." The council members made sounds like breaking glass. Chen realized they were laughing. "Demands?" said another council member. "From humans? Your species has no military fleet. Your technology is centuries behind ours. What could you possibly do to enforce these demands?" Chen reached into her jacket and pulled out a small device. It was no bigger than her palm and looked like a simple black cube. The council members stopped laughing. "This is not a request," Chen said. "This is an ultimatum. You have 72 hours to comply with our demands. If you refuse, humanity will take what we are owed." Nexus Prime leaned forward on his platform. The patterns on his crystal body moved faster now, like angry lightning. "You threaten us? Your entire species could not scratch the hull of one of our ships. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. We have enslaved races that were far more advanced than yours." "The warning was clear," Chen said. She pressed a button on the small device. It began to glow with a soft blue light. "You have 72 hours to comply. After that, we collect what you owe us." With interest, the council members began making harsh sounds. Their crystal bodies flashed with angry red light. But Chen was already walking toward the door. "Guards!" Nexus Prime called out. "Stop the human!" But nothing happened. Chen looked back and saw confusion on the aliens' faces. Well, she assumed it was confusion. It was hard to tell with beings made of crystal. "Your guards are busy," Chen said calmly. "They're having some technical difficulties with their equipment." She walked out of the council chamber. Behind her, the aliens were making louder and angrier sounds. Some of them sounded worried now. Chen made her way back through the crystal corridors. Everything looked the same as before, but she knew that wasn't true. Her people had been working for months to prepare for this moment. While the aliens thought humans were just simple miners and factory workers, Chen's team had been studying every system in this building. She reached the transport platform that would take her back to her ship. As she waited for it to arrive, she looked out through the clear walls at the consortium's capital city. Millions of beings lived here. Most of them were slaves from conquered worlds. They worked in factories and mines and served the crystal masters who ruled over them. Soon, things would change for all of them. The transport arrived. It was a small, floating platform with no walls or safety rails. Chen stepped onto it and felt her stomach drop as it began to move. These aliens had no understanding of human fear of heights. As the platform carried her through the city, Chen saw the massive ships in orbit above them. The consortium fleet was the largest military force in the galaxy. Their weapons could turn a planet into dust. Their shields could stop any known weapon. But the aliens had made one big mistake. They thought technology was everything. They believed that having the biggest guns and the strongest shields made them unbeatable. They never understood that humans had something they didn't. Humans could think in ways that surprised everyone, including themselves. Chen's ship was small and ugly compared to the consortium vessels around it. It looked like exactly what it was supposed to look like, a simple human cargo ship. The aliens had scanned it dozens of times and found nothing dangerous. They were right. The ship carried no weapons, no soldiers, no secret technology, but it carried something much more dangerous than any of those things. It carried the truth. Chen climbed aboard and sealed the airlock behind her. She walked to the bridge and sat in the pilot's chair. Her fingers moved over the controls, setting course for Earth. Message sent, she said into her communicator. Package delivered. Phase 1 complete. The response came immediately. Understood. Begin Phase 2 on your mark. Chen looked back at the Crystal City one more time. In 72 hours, the consortium would learn what happened when you ignored a warning from humanity. They would learn the price of treating people like property. They would learn why humans had survived every danger on Earth and reached for the stars. The ship pulled away from the station and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the consortium fleet continued its patrols. The Council continued making their plans. None of them noticed that something had already begun. Commander Vexith stood in the control room of the consortium battleship Eternal Glory. Through the large windows, he could see the mining station on Earth's moon. Thousands of human workers moved like ants across the gray surface. They were digging deeper into the rock, pulling out the metals that powered the consortium's empire. But something felt wrong. Vexth was not like the other consortium members. His crystal body was smaller and darker. He had spent his life fighting wars across the galaxy. He had learned to notice when things changed. Even in small ways, the humans were still working. They followed their schedules. They operated their machines. But they were different now. They watched everything. When a consortium guard walked past, human workers would look at each other in ways they had never done before. Report, Vexus said to his communications officer. Sir, we have lost contact with Patrol Group 7, the officer replied. They were checking the outer system near the gas giant. Their last message was 12 hours ago. Vex turned away from the window. This was the third patrol group to go silent in the past 2 days. The first one had been near the asteroid belt. The second had been investigating strange signals from an empty sector of space. Send Search Group Alpha to their last known position, Vexith ordered. Yes, sir. Vexith walked to his command station. The screens showed him everything that was happening in this star system. Dozens of ships moved between the planets. Cargo vessels carried Earth's resources to other parts of the galaxy. Military patrols kept watch for any threats. Everything looked normal. But Vex had fought enough wars to know that normal could be dangerous. His communicator buzzed. The message came from the capital world where the High Council lived. All forces remain on standard patrol. The message read, The human ultimatum is not a threat. Continue normal operations. Vex made a sound like grinding stone. The Council was making a mistake. They thought humans were weak because their technology was simple. They thought humans were stupid because they had accepted the trade deal 50 years ago. But Vexith remembered the old wars. He remembered how the consortium had conquered other species. The easy victories came from races that fought the way the consortium expected them to fight. The hard victories came from species that thought differently. Humans thought differently. On the moon below, Marcus Torres put down his mining tool. He was supposed to be a simple worker, digging metals from the rock. The consortium guards thought he was just another human slave. They were wrong. Marcus was a general in Earth's hidden military. He had been working on the moon for 3 years, watching and learning. Around him, Other workers did the same. They were soldiers, engineers, and scientists. All of them pretended to be simple miners. Marcus touched his ear. A tiny device there let him talk to other teams across the solar system. Phase 2 is active, he whispered. All units report status. The responses came quickly. Team leaders from Mars, the asteroid belt, and the outer planets all confirmed they were ready. Hundreds of humans who had been pretending to be workers, traders, and prisoners were now revealing their true purpose. For 50 years, humanity had been planning for this moment. On Mars, Dr. Emily Rodriguez walked through the research station where she had worked for 20 years. The consortium thought she was studying soil samples. In reality, she had been mapping every computer system, every security protocol, and every weakness in their technology. Emily reached her private lab. The door looked normal from the outside, but behind it was equipment the consortium had never seen. Human engineers had spent decades building technology that could hide inside alien systems without being detected. "Beginning infiltration protocol," she whispered into her communicator. Her fingers moved over controls that looked nothing like consortium technology. Screens came alive with data streams and system maps. In minutes, she was inside the computer networks that ran the Mars colonies. The aliens never suspected that humans could build technology they couldn't understand. Back on the Eternal Glory, Vex received another message. Search Group Alpha had reached the last known position of Patrol Group 7. "Sir," his communications officer said. "Search Group Alpha reports they found the patrol ships." "Survivors?" "Yes, sir. All crew members are alive and unharmed. But their ships are completely disabled. Engines dead. Weapons offline. Life support running on emergency power." Vex made that grinding sound again. "What disabled them?" "Unknown, sir. The ships show no signs of weapons damage. No energy burns. No projectile impacts. The crews say their systems simply stopped working." This made no sense. Consortium ships were protected by the best technology in the galaxy. Nothing should be able to disable them without leaving traces. "Sir," the communications officer continued, "Search Group Alpha is also reporting system failures. Their weapons are offline, and their engines are running at minimum power." Why? Vex felt something he had not experienced in many years: fear. "Recall all patrol groups immediately," he ordered. "Bring them back to the main fleet." "Sir, 3 more patrol groups are not responding to communications." Vexith looked out at the moon again. The human workers were still there, still digging. But now he noticed something else. They were not looking down at their work anymore. They were looking up at the consortium ships, and they were smiling. Deep inside Earth, in a bunker that no alien had ever seen, General Harrison Cole watched screens that showed the entire solar system. Each screen represented a different human team that had been hiding among the consortium forces for years. "Sir," his aide said, "all teams report successful infiltration. Enemy computer systems are compromised. We have access to their communications, navigation, and weapons systems." Cole nodded. This was the moment they had worked toward for 50 years. When the consortium first arrived at Earth, they had demanded immediate surrender. Earth's leaders had agreed, but they had also made a secret decision. If humanity was going to serve alien masters, they would learn everything about those masters. They would find every weakness, every flaw, every mistake, and when the time came, they would use that knowledge. "Begin Phase 3, Cole ordered. Across the solar system, human operatives received the signal. On mining stations, cargo ships, and research facilities, people who had pretended to be slaves for decades began to reveal their true purpose. In the space around Earth, Vexith watched his fleet slowly fall apart. One by one, his ships reported system failures. Communications went down. Weapons stopped working. Even life support began to flicker. And through it all, the human workers on the moon kept watching and smiling. The silence was spreading across consortium space. But it was not an empty silence. It was the silence of predators moving in the dark. It was the silence of humanity preparing to collect what they were owed. Nexus Prime stood in the center of the High Council's emergency meeting room. For the first time in 1,000 years, The crystal walls around him flickered with unstable light. The building's power systems were failing. "Report," he commanded his technical staff. The lead technician's crystal body pulsed with nervous energy. "Sir, we have lost contact with 47 star systems. Our communication networks are failing across 3 sectors. The main data archive has been corrupted." "How is this possible?" "We don't know, sir. The failures appear to be random, but they're happening too fast to be accidents." Nexus Prime made a sound like breaking metal. In the past 72 hours, the consortium's mighty empire had begun falling apart. Ships lost power in space. Colonies went dark. Even their home world was experiencing problems. And it had all started after the human ambassador delivered her ultimatum. "Sir," another technician interrupted. "We're receiving a transmission from Commander Vexth's fleet. Put it through." The large display screen activated, showing Vex's scarred crystal face. Behind him, the bridge of his ship was dark, except for emergency lighting. "Council members," Vext said, "I must report that my entire fleet is disabled. We are running on backup power only. But that is not the worst news." "Explain." "We found our missing patrol ships. All of them. The crews are alive, but their vessels have been stripped of all technology, navigation computers, weapons systems, communication equipment, even food processors. Everything has been carefully removed." Nexus Prime felt something cold move through his crystal body. "Removed by whom?" "Humans, sir. We found evidence of human boarding equipment. They didn't destroy our ships. They took them apart piece by piece." The council chamber filled with sounds of shock and disbelief. "Impossible," said another council member. "Humans have no space-capable military forces." "Sir," Vexeth continued, "that's not all. We intercepted human communications coming from our own ships. They've been using consortium vessels to move around the galaxy. Our own star charts, our security codes, our military protocols. They have everything." The screen went dark as the transmission ended. Nexus Prime stood in silence for a long moment. Around him, the other council members made worried sounds. Their crystal bodies flickered with unstable patterns. Dr. Sarah Kim sat in a hidden control room deep inside the consortium's main data center. For 20 years, she had worked here as a human consultant, helping the aliens understand their captured technology. They thought she was useful, but harmless. They were wrong. Sarah's fingers moved over a keyboard that looked nothing like consortium technology. Around her, dozens of screens showed the computer networks that ran the alien empire. Every communication system, every database, every automated defense network, and now, all of it belonged to humanity. "Control. This is Data Team Leader," she said into her communicator. "Package 1 is complete. We have full access to their military command structure. 24P. Confirmed, Data Leader. Begin Package 2. Sarah smiled as she started the next phase of her mission. For decades, the consortium had forced humans to work in their technology centers. The aliens thought they were just using human creativity to solve problems. What they didn't realize was that humans had been learning. Every system, every protocol, every weakness. And while they learned, they had been building their own technology that could slip through alien defenses like a knife through paper. The secret was simple. The consortium built their systems to defend against consortium-style attacks. They never imagined that someone might approach the problem from a completely different direction. Humans didn't try to break down the aliens' defenses. Instead, they built technology that looked harmless to consortium scanners but could grow and spread once it was inside their systems. Like a virus that the alien computers couldn't recognize because it didn't behave like any virus they had ever seen. On Earth, General Torres received a message that made him smile for the first time in 50 years. "Sir," his communications officer said, "we have confirmation from all teams. Operation Ghost Fleet is complete." "How many ships?" 347 consortium vessels captured. All crews are alive and being held in comfortable conditions. All technology has been documented and studied. Torres walked to the main display screen. It showed a three-dimensional map of local space. Red dots marked the positions of disabled consortium ships. Blue dots showed human teams that had infiltrated alien facilities. There were thousands of blue dots. Sir, the officer continued, we're also receiving reports from the outer colonies. Human operatives embedded in the consortium's slave populations are beginning to reveal themselves. We have people on every major world in their empire. This had been the greatest challenge of the entire operation. How do you hide an army inside an enemy empire for 50 years? The answer was simple. You don't hide soldiers. You hide people who can become soldiers when the time comes. Every human worker in consortium space had been carefully chosen. Engineers who could disable alien technology. Scientists who could understand alien weaknesses. Soldiers who could fight in ways aliens never expected. And teachers who could organize the other slave races to fight for their own freedom. Commander Vexith floated in his damaged ship's medical bay. Emergency surgery had repaired the worst of his injuries from the recent system failures, but his crystal body still flickered with pain. A message came through his personal communicator. The channel was secured with codes that only the highest military commanders knew. Vexith, the voice said. It was General Harrison Cole, speaking from Earth. I think it's time we talked. Vexith's crystal body pulsed with surprise. How did a human know his private communication codes? You're wondering how we got your codes, Cole continued. The answer is simple. We've had them for 30 years. We've had everything for 30 years. Impossible. Is it? Think about it, Vexth. How many humans work in your technology centers? How many humans repair your ships? How many humans have access to your computer systems? Vexith began to understand. The horrible, impossible truth began to sink in. Every human in consortium space is a potential intelligence asset, Cole explained. We didn't infiltrate your empire. We were invited in. You brought us inside your defenses and never realized what we were doing. What do you want? The same thing we've always wanted. Freedom for humanity and every other species you've enslaved. The only difference is that now we have the power to take it. The communication ended, leaving Vex alone with the truth. For 50 years, the consortium had thought they were using humanity as a resource. In reality, humanity had been using the consortium as a teacher, and now, class was over. Back on the consortium homeworld, Nexus Prime watched his empire crumble around him. Communication networks fell silent. Military fleets went dark. Even the lights in his palace flickered and died. Through the crystal windows, he could see the city below. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived there. Most of them were slaves who had been conquered by the consortium over the centuries. But now, those slaves were looking up at the palace. And they were no longer afraid. They had learned that their masters could be beaten. They had seen that even the mighty consortium could fall. And leading them were humans who had spent 50 years learning how to fight a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen. The warning had been clear. The consortium had ignored it. Now it was time to pay. The 72-hour deadline passed at exactly midnight, Earth time. Across 3 star systems, the consortium empire began to die. It didn't die with explosions or massive battles. It died quietly, systematically, like a machine being taken apart one piece at a time. On Kepler Station, the largest trading hub in consortium space, Captain Maria Santos led her team through corridors that should have been defended by automated security systems. But the security systems were offline. The blast doors stood open. Even the lights had been dimmed to save power. Control. This is Team 7, Maria said into her communicator. Kepler Station is secured. No resistance encountered. Confirmed, Team 7. Begin asset recovery. Maria and her team moved toward the station's main computer core. Around them, thousands of alien traders and workers watched in silence. They had been expecting a battle, but the humans had simply walked in and taken control. The secret was simple. For 20 years, humans had been working on Kepler Station. They maintained the computers, repaired the machinery, and handled the complex calculations that kept trade flowing across the galaxy. What the aliens never realized was that those same humans had been slowly rebuilding the station's systems. Every repair included hidden modifications. Every software update contained secret programs. Every new component had been designed to respond to human commands. When the deadline passed, Maria had simply activated those programs. The station's defenses turned off. The security systems shut down. Even the artificial gravity could be controlled from the device in Maria's hand. "Sir," one of her team members reported, "we have access to the trade records. Every transaction, every shipping route, every financial account." Maria smiled. This wasn't theft, this was accounting. For 50 years, the consortium had stolen resources from Earth and hundreds of other worlds. They had forced entire species to work as slaves. They had taken everything and given nothing in return. Now, humanity was going to calculate exactly how much the consortium owed, and they were going to collect it with interest. On the mining world of Xerion 7, former slave populations watched in amazement as human teams systematically dismantled the consortium's operations. The massive ore processors that had worked non-stop for decades simply stopped working. The cargo ships that carried stolen resources to other worlds found their engines disabled. But the humans didn't just break things. They also built things. Dr. James Park had spent 15 years working in Xerion 7's medical facilities. The consortium thought he was just treating injured workers. In reality, he had been building a complete database of every species on the planet, Medical Team Alpha to all liberated populations. He broadcast over the planet's communication system. "We have food, medicine, and shelter available in the following locations." The message was translated into 47 different languages. Within hours, the former slaves began to organize themselves. They had leaders who had been waiting for this moment for decades. They had plans that had been passed down through generations. All they had needed was the chance to act. The humans gave them that chance. Meanwhile, in the deepest bunkers of the consortium capital world, Nexus Prime and the surviving council members huddled around a failing communication terminal. Half of their empire had gone dark, the other half was reporting impossible things. "Sir," a technician reported, "we're receiving broadcasts from the human teams. They're not attacking our ships or killing our people. They're auditing us." "Explain." "They're going through our financial records, our trade agreements, our resource extraction reports. They're calculating how much wealth we've taken from each conquered world." Nexus Prime's crystal body flickered with confusion. "Why would they do that?" "Why? I don't know, sir. But they're also broadcasting these calculations to every world in our territory. They're showing the enslaved populations exactly how much was stolen from them." This was worse than any military defeat. The humans weren't just taking the consortium's territory. They were destroying the idea that the consortium was legitimate. For 1,000 years, the consortium had told conquered species that they were bringing order and prosperity to the galaxy. They claimed that their rule was necessary and beneficial. Now the humans were proving that it was all lies. On Earth, Admiral Jennifer Walsh coordinated the largest military operation in human history. But it wasn't a traditional military operation. Instead of armies and fleets, she commanded thousands of small teams spread across dozens of star systems. Each team had a specific mission. Some were designed to disable consortium infrastructure. Others were meant to free slave populations. Still others focused on capturing and analyzing alien technology. But all of them shared the same goal: make it impossible for the consortium to continue operating. "Admiral," her aide reported, "we're receiving surrender requests from 12 consortium colonies. They're asking for protection from their own government." Walsh nodded. This had been part of the plan from the beginning. The consortium ruled through fear, but they also ruled through economic dependence. Their colonies needed trade routes, supply lines, and technological support to survive. Humanity was now offering all of those things, but with a very different philosophy. "Send response teams to all surrender requests," Walsh ordered. "Standard protection protocols. No slavery, no forced labor, no tribute payments." It was a simple message. Join us and be free. Or stay with the consortium and fall with them. Most chose freedom. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again in the consortium council chamber. But everything had changed since her last visit. The room was dark, except for emergency lighting. Only 3 council members remained, and their crystal bodies flickered weakly. The great platforms where they had once sat in judgment over the galaxy were cracked and broken. Chen carried a simple folder in her hands. Inside were documents that represented 50 years of careful accounting. "Nexus Prime," she said to the largest of the surviving council members, "I have come to present you with an invoice." "An invoice?" "For services rendered. For resources taken. For lives destroyed." Chen opened the folder and began to read. "Extraction of rare metals from Earth's moon. 400 billion credits. Forced labor from human workers. 600 billion credits. Damage to Earth's environment. 300 billion credits." She continued reading. The list went on for several minutes. "The total amount owed to humanity is 2,400 billion consortium credits. With compound interest over 50 years, the current balance due is 14,600 billion credits." Nexus Prime made a sound like dying wind chimes. We don't have that much." "I know," Chen said calmly. "That's why we're prepared to accept alternative forms of payment." She pulled out another document. This one listed star systems, colonies, and trade routes, territorial holdings sufficient to equal the debt owed, plus reparations to all species you have enslaved, plus a complete cessation of all hostile activities. "You're demanding our entire empire." "No," Chen corrected. "We're collecting payment for what you stole." "There's a difference." She placed the documents on the floor in front of the broken platforms. "You have 24 hours to sign this agreement. After that, we'll simply take what we're owed." Chen turned to leave, then stopped. "Oh, and Nexus Prime? This isn't revenge. This is justice. There's a difference between those things too." As she walked out of the chamber, Chen could hear the sounds of the council members arguing among themselves. But it didn't matter what they decided. Humanity had already won. The collection was nearly complete. Across the galaxy, former slaves looked up at the sky and saw human ships bringing food, medicine, and hope. They saw the mighty consortium reduced to a few broken leaders hiding in dark rooms, and they began to believe that freedom was possible. The warning had been clear. The consortium had ignored it. Now they were learning the price of that mistake. 6 months later, Ambassador Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of Unity Station, humanity's first permanent base in deep space. Through the transparent walls, she could see ships from dozens of different species docking at the station's ports. The ships carried representatives from worlds that had been under consortium rule for centuries. They came seeking membership in the Terran Protection Compact, the alliance that had replaced the old empire. The compact was different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of demanding tribute and obedience, it offered protection and partnership. Instead of forcing species to follow human rules, it helped them rebuild their own governments. "Ambassador," her aide approached. "The delegates are ready for your address." Chen nodded and made her way to the main assembly hall. The hall was huge, designed to accommodate beings of many different sizes and environmental needs. Water-breathing species sat in sealed tanks. Gas cloud beings floated in special containment fields. Crystal entities like the former consortium members stood on reinforced platforms. As Chen walked to the speaking platform, she looked out at the audience. Representatives from over 300 worlds sat before her. Some were species that humanity had never heard of before. Others were old enemies who had fought against human teams during the collection. All of them were here by choice. "Friends," Chen began, her voice carried by translation systems that spoke in hundreds of languages. 6 months ago, our galaxy was ruled by fear. Today, we gather as equals to build something better. The audience listened in respectful silence. Many of them remembered the day when human ships had arrived at their worlds. Not as conquerors, but as liberators. Some of you have asked why humanity chose to dismantle the consortium instead of simply taking its place. The answer is simple. We didn't fight for power. We fought for justice. Chen paused and looked toward a section where a few Zeltharian survivors sat. They were the remnants of the former consortium leadership, now reduced to representing just their home world. We gave the consortium a clear warning. We asked them to treat all species with dignity and respect. We offered them the chance to change their ways peacefully. Nexus Prime, his crystal body now dim and scarred, sat among the Zeltharian delegation. He had signed the reparation agreements after his government collapsed completely. Now he served as a living reminder of what happened when diplomacy was ignored. They chose to ignore our warning, Chen continued. They believed that might made right. That superior technology gave them the authority to enslave others. They learned the price of that mistake. In the audience, representatives from former consortium slave worlds nodded in agreement. Many of them had lived their entire lives under alien rule. They had never imagined that freedom was possible. But we are not here to dwell on the past. We are here to build the future. Chen activated a holographic display that showed the current state of local space. Green areas marked worlds that had joined the compact. Blue areas showed neutral territories. Only a few small red zones remained where conflicts still needed to be resolved. The Terran Protection Compact stands on 3 simple principles, Chen explained. First, every species has the right to govern itself according to its own values and traditions. Second, no species has the right to enslave or exploit another. Third, those who threaten the freedom of others will face consequences. Third, Dr. Emily Rodriguez, now serving as the Compact's Director of Technology Sharing, watched from the gallery. She remembered the years she had spent pretending to be a simple researcher while actually mapping consortium systems. Now she worked openly with alien scientists, sharing human discoveries while learning from other species. The technology exchange had produced amazing results. Human medical techniques, combined with alien biotechnology, had virtually eliminated several diseases. Alien energy systems integrated with human engineering had made space travel faster and safer. But the most important discovery was simpler. Different species thinking together could solve problems that none of them could handle alone. Some of you may wonder about humanity's role in this new galaxy, Chen continued. We do not seek to rule over you. We seek to stand beside you. Captain Maria Santos, who had led the mission to capture Kepler Station, now commanded one of the Compact's patrol fleets. Her ships included crews from 15 different species, all working together to protect trade routes and respond to emergencies. The old consortium fleets had been tools of oppression, forcing obedience through fear. The compact fleets were different. They arrived at trouble spots not to conquer, but to help. We have learned something important about ourselves during these past months, Chen said. Humanity is strongest when we fight not for dominance, but for protection. Not for conquest, but for justice. General Marcus Torres, watching from Earth via communication link, smiled at those words. The hidden military that humanity had built over 50 years was now the core of the Compact's defense forces, but their mission had changed. Instead of preparing for a war of liberation, they now worked to prevent wars from starting. Instead of learning to destroy enemies, they focused on protecting the innocent. It was a better use of their skills. To those species considering membership in the Compact, know this. We will not force you to join us. We will not punish you for staying neutral. We will not demand payment for our protection. Chen looked directly at the camera that was broadcasting her speech across the galaxy. But we will not allow anyone to return to the old ways. We will not permit slavery, exploitation, or the abuse of weaker species. In a small section of the audience, delegates from the hegemony worlds shifted uncomfortably. The hegemony was a group of militaristic species that had stayed neutral during the fall of the consortium. Some of them had been considering whether they could fill the power vacuum left by the aliens' defeat. Chen's words made it clear that such attempts would not be tolerated. The galaxy is large enough for all of us to prosper, she continued. There are entire star systems waiting to be explored. There are scientific discoveries that could benefit every species. There are art forms, music, literature, and ideas that we can share with each other. But none of this is possible if we return to the rule of the strong over the weak. Ambassador Chen concluded her speech by addressing the question that many delegates had been afraid to ask. You may wonder what will happen when humanity becomes old and weak. When our technology falls behind that of other species. When our military is no longer the strongest in the galaxy. The hall was completely silent now. When that day comes, we hope that the species we have helped will remember our example. We hope they will choose to protect the weak rather than exploit them. We hope they will choose justice over power. And if they don't, we hope that someone else will stand up and give them the same choice we gave the consortium. Chen paused one final time. The warning was clear. We made sure of that. The consequences were explained in advance. What happened next was entirely the consortium's choice. We hope that future generations will make better choices. The assembly hall erupted in sounds of approval from dozens of different species. Some clapped, some made musical notes, others flashed lights or changed colors. But in the quiet section where Nexus Prime sat, there was only silence. After the session ended, Chen made her way back to the observation deck. Through the transparent walls, she watched ships departing for their home worlds. They carried news of the new galaxy, stories of the alliance that had replaced an empire, and hope for a future without fear. Her communicator buzzed with a message from Earth. Ma'am, long-range sensors are detecting unknown vessels approaching from outside our galaxy. Estimated arrival: 18 months, Chen sighed. There would always be new threats, new challenges, new species that thought they could take what didn't belong to them. But the galaxy was ready now. Humanity had shown that empires could fall. Other species had learned that they didn't have to accept oppression. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, human ships continued their patrols. They watched for dangers. They protected the innocent. They made sure that the warning would always be clear. The payment had been collected in full. Justice had been served. Now it was time to guard what they had built.